Good evening, everybody. This is Matt Weiss. We're doing a little test of Radio 41.2 The Berg. But if you are tuning in right now live and joining us on Facebook Live, we'd like to welcome you to Art Rooney Stadium on the Bluff at Duquesne University for this, the final game of the Thunderbirds 2018 campaign against the DET Mechanix. It started against the Mechanix and it will end against the Mechanix. And we would like to say that there's a lot on the line, but really it's mostly about pride. The Mechanix come in here having won nothing, and the Thunderbirds come in on a win streak, 2 games. They are right now sitting at 3 wins on the season and would very much like to finish this season up with a win against these Mechanix. That way they would blank them for the season and also finish up with a little bit of momentum going into next year. Of course, this is a radio-style broadcast. We're Facebook Live. You may be hearing my voice while watching the video of the game. We're going to sync up the video with the audio as we did in the first 2 games of the season this year. But if any of you are confused as to why the call is as descriptive as it is, as if the viewer can't see, well, the viewer can't see right now. There are no viewers. This is just a radio audience. Meanwhile, we are about to start the game. Eddie Peters has the disc. His back is to the suburbs, the eastern suburbs, and he is facing downtown as he gets ready to pull this disc. He'll be throwing into a slight wind. Out there joining him, Trucks Trimble, Anthony Kahn, Dylan Tranquillo, Pat McMillan, Jordan Robarsh, and got one other player. Didn't get that number, but we will shortly. Probably Dave Angeletti. Pull comes down. It's a short pull, caught by Leiter. Leiter has the disc about 10 yards, 15 yards outside of the end zone and near his own sideline. Jess Mass goes up the line, and Anthony Kahn gets the block, reaches up there, and the pass was just a little bit too high. Pat McMullen picks it up. He's 20 yards outside the end zone. He's on the home sideline, throws a nifty little scooper to Eddie Peters. Had Trucks Trimble for a second, but thinks the better of it. Swings it to the middle. Pat McMullen gets it back to Peters, and Peters sees Trucks cutting to the other side, but he was covered. Robarsh pulls the disc down right on the goal line, finds Tranquillo, and it's 1-0 favor of the Thunderbirds, who start out quickly. We don't have our scoreboard operating yet, but that didn't take very long. Thunderbirds, in less than a minute, take the disc away from the Mechanix on an attempted strike cut up to Jessica Mast. And that pass had been a little bit lower, then Akon wouldn't have had the opportunity to block it. But Jess's size is going to be an issue when she's being defended by somebody like Anthony Kahn, who's not a big guy, but he's big. Bigger than Jessica, at least. Now, the Thunderbirds getting ready to play defense again with the D2 team on the field. We might want to look for them to play a little bit of zone defense. Pat Hammond's getting ready to pull. He launches one. McMullen and Trimble stay on. Then racing down the field to cover are Shayna Repperman and Steve May. And they drop into that zone that we've seen them play a lot this year. Disc being swung back and forth among the handlers. Jordan Robarge in the front of that zone, too. And this one is a forehand, goes up the line and falls harmlessly out of bounds. Down around the 5-yard line of the Thunderbirds. Trucks Trimble, who was in coverage. But there was never really any chance that was going to be caught. May with the disc. Shuffles it up to a diving Peach, but Peach can't come up with it. So it's a turnover again. This time the disc in the Mechanix end zone, or in end of the field. Paul McClellan has it, swings it across the field to Duhlman. Duhlman shelves one a little bit, and it is pulled down easily by Steve May. Thunderbirds in the attacking zone. That pass was intended for number 25, PJ Saba, but it got over his head very quickly, and then he slipped down. Pat McMillan sends it back to Robarsh, who shuffles it to him on a give and go. Now the disc is in Steve May's hands right on the doorstep, and he floats up a little high release to Trucks Trimble, who turns around and catches it. So a couple of quick scores for the Thunderbirds, both of them breaks, and it's Pittsburgh 2, Detroit nothing.
And that's another Thunderbirds goal! Assisting on the goal, his second of the season and first of the game, number 83, Steve
Thunderbirds will pull again. see if they can get 3 straight breaks to go up. And some of the Thunderbirds you're used to seeing not here today. Sam Van Dusen not playing. David Vatz not active today. Jack Heffron, Owen Watt, and Alex Thomas, AT, all of them in street clothes on the sidelines. Mo Diata walking without a limp and without a brace on the sidelines, number 77. Tore that ACL in the first game of the year for the T-Birds, and he's been much missed. But he is back and looking good, and he says he started rehab with Donald Robinson, so we will expect him to be back and in fine form next year, hopefully, if he decides to play for the Thunderbirds. T-Birds come out in a person-to-person defense. Disc is swung over to Chris Allman. Now the disc in Billy Manwaring's hands. He is double-teamed by Akon and Jordan Robarge, but he manages to break out of that. Now, Austin Johnson with the disc on the far sideline. He rips a forehand. Jess Mass running, trying to catch up with it. I don't think that it was intended for Jess. I think that was for PJ Saba. And, PJ Saba. He told me I could say it either way I wanted to, but we'll say it the way he does. But that was just one Billy Manwaring, I think, didn't put enough air under it. Neither one of them had a chance to catch up to it. Thunderbirds in a vertical stack. Eddie Peters, the deep being cleared, and Angeletti running underneath a long throw. That one goes about 50 yards, and so 20 yards to go for a score. And now Max Shepard has it in his hand, throws it inside out to Dylan. It goes up a little bit beyond his reach, but all he has to do is run with it, and it's 3-0. So 3 consecutive breaks to start the game for the T-Birds, and they'll be pulling.
Thunderbirds go! Assisting on the goal, his first of the game.
Brent Steep, the general manager and coach of the Mechanix, isn't here today. Chris Allman, who is the captain and fills in for him, is on the field and also coaching. And I asked him, Chris, anything you want to say before the game? Anything you want to spotlight or things you're working on? He says, nah, I'm just going to play. And so I think that conveys the atmosphere at the game today. Clearly everybody excited to be playing Pro Ultimate in Pittsburgh, but, this is definitely an unfamiliar position for these Thunderbirds. 3 years in a row, they've been in the conference final game, the division final, and that's not going to happen this year, obviously. In fact, this game is 2 teams that have no opportunity to move beyond, and Mechanix is trying to get a win. Disc is in the hands of number 21, McMullen. He swings the disc over to the far sideline, gets it back from Alex Hunt. Now it's swung across the field to Ryan Mario. Actually, it's Danny Hunt today wearing Mario's jersey. We're going to have a lot of that. Tom Duhlman's got it. He gets it into the middle. Jeff Schubert shuffles it over to Hunt. Duhlman to Hunt, back to Duhlman, then back across the field to McClellan. About 10, 20 yards out. This one sneaks right by Steve May. And then the score finally, Joe Rogers finds Schubert for the score. And it is 3-1. Favor of the Thunderbirds. So the Mechanix working against the zone there and managed to do so effectively. Good work by their handlers, and eventually they found their way through, popped it up the middle, and the Thunderbirds unable to find an answer. Had an opportunity maybe there at the end for Angeletti or May. Stick out a hand and knock that last pass down. Thunderbirds still hold that 3-1 lead, and we don't have an official time right now, but
somewhere around 8 minutes.
Yeah. Matty Francis keeping the clock as best he can. We don't have the scoreboards operational, but he says somewhere around 8 minutes, and I imagine eventually I'll check in with Matty and the stats crew over there, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a sense of just how much time is left in this contest as it moves along. Meanwhile, Kenny Fridella takes a high pull, sends it up to Jonathan Mast. He is flanked on either side by Fridella and Shepard, and he decides to come back. Jonathan does with a backhand break to Fridella. They're in their own attacking zone or their own defensive zone near midfield. Jimmy Toll catches one up the middle and sends it over to Kenny. Jonathan Mast shakes and bakes. Kenny Fridella decides not to send it up the line to him, and so Jimmy Toll fills, and the stall count's got to be getting up there, but Kenny held it for a while. John throws a surgical pass across the field to a wide-open Max Shepard, who goes up and catches it, and he's a little bit closer to the opposite sideline, throws a lefty dump. This one is blocked out of Jimmy Toll threw a dump to Max. Max laid out to catch the deflected pass. Now John Mast has it on our side of the field, and they're about 25 yards outside. He throws a high-release forehand that Ethan Beardsley tracks down, and will he try to throw a goal today? Ethan Beardsley doesn't have anybody back until Kenny Fridella pops open. He throws that dump. Disc is still on the home sideline. Now it's in the middle of the field. John Mast looking at about 15 yards to throw the score, and he finds with an inside out. With an inside out, he finds Chris Graber, and Chris Graber gets it to Noah Robinson, the rookie sensation, number 94, the big guy. So 2 new Thunderbirds, Graber to Robinson, finish off that point, and the Thunderbirds go ahead, 4-1. We've got about seven and a half minutes left in this first period. Talked a little bit with Noah Robinson before the game and asked him, hey, how you enjoying being a pro? Of course, coming off a tremendous college nationals where the Pitt men's team and Sabinor made a remarkable run all the way to the finals. We're unable to come away with a national championship this time, but definitely put the college ultimate world on notice that they are a team to be reckoned with and will be a team to be reckoned with in the years to come. And now the disc is in play. The Mechanics have it. Been pulled to them. Jess Mast swings it outside to Joe Rogers. Joe Rogers finds Danny Hunt. Now Jess Mast is facing a big double team, and she expertly passes out of it in front of a bid by Eddie Peters. And now we've got Danny Hunt loads one up and finds Jeff Schubert on the goal line in front of a diving bid by Trucks Trimble. That was a forehand that Trucks couldn't shut down, and looks like a timeout might have been called. No. Brian Heim signaling something. Trucks Trimble was on the mark with Schubert after a long throw. Eddie Peters laid out, tried to block it on one end, and Trucks Trimble tried to block it on the other. Looked like a contact foul, but it was called on the thrower. So Schubert is now being double teamed by Trucks Trimble, who is way bigger than he is, and Pat McMullen. Now it's back in the hands of Duhlman, and he finds number 30 Hunt in the middle of the field. Duhlman has it back, throws it to Jess Mast, pulls it down. She fakes a big backhand. She's being marked by Shayna Repperman. So we've got the first female-female matchup on the field. She cuts downfield, and now Duhlman throws a big high release, but miscommunicates with his receiver Hunt. Pat McMullen gets it, sends it to Trimble. Now it's Eddie Peters' disc, and he throws up a high bending forehand deep to Pat McMullen, who catches up with it with his left hand, crashes to the turf, stands up, throws the disc back to the goal line, and Thunderbirds pick up their 5th on a break. And they will pull again. So Noah Robinson saying he's having a good time playing Pro Ultimate. I asked him, what are your plans for club this season? He said, I am not going to play club. I haven't been healthy throughout my entire college career, and I got one more year, and I want to make the best of it. And you can understand why he wants to make the best of it, because he has a legitimate chance to win a national championship with the Pitt men's team. So he's going to focus on getting well after this Thunderbird season is over tonight, and hopefully we'll see him out at some informal ultimate, but definitely want that young man at full speed, because he could truly have a breakout year. I guess he had a breakout year this year, but he could make himself a champion next year. Max Shepard with a beautiful pull into the wind that comes down 4 yards deep in the end zone. And now McClellan's got it, and he sends a pass that almost floats over the head of number 3, Chris Allman, but Allman manages to corral it in front of Jimmy Toll. Thunderbirds in a man, and this one, a long forehand at midfield that Josh Leiter was unable to come up with. That one came from McClellan, who tried to finesse a pass in there, and it definitely hit Leiter in the hands, but he couldn't pull it down. Jimmy Toll with the disc. Being marked by Allman. He floats one up for John Mast, who comes down with it. He had company there, both Leiter and Allman, and then he jacks a hammer across the field, and it finds Robinson. What a remarkable throw by Jonathan Mast. My goodness. He had described this to you. If you play Ultimate, you'll understand that generally when you throw a hammer downfield, you're going to be throwing it as a right-hander to a receiver cutting to your left, because that is the natural bend of a hammer, which goes from left to right. In this case, Noah Robinson was cutting away from Jonathan Mast, towards his right, away from our sideline, and John put enough air and enough spin on that hammer so that it actually helixed, and so when Noah Robinson ran it down, it was curving back toward him. So an expert throw, a surgical throw, that gives the Thunderbirds a 6-1 lead, and they have only allowed 1 point and have broken on pretty much every point so far this game. So Thunderbirds pretty much having their way with the Detroit Mechanix, and given that we don't have some of the
cash prize gets higher and higher every game.
the usual suspects for the Mechanix here, it's not that big a surprise. Jess Mast shuffles it over to Duhlman. Duhlman finds Schubert. Schubert sends one across the middle of the field, and it's just a little bit too hot for PJ Saba. And so the Thunderbirds will pick it up in the attacking zone, just past midfield. Pat Mack to Eddie Peters, coming to the forehand sideline. Anthony Kahn with a jumping in cut. He sends it back into the middle of the field to Peters. Peters surveys downfield. Doesn't like what he sees from a cut from McMullen, so he breaks with a really nice break to Trucks Trimble, and then it's all over. But an easy throw to the break side, a backhand to Peach, Justin Kincaid in the end zone, and the T-Birds notch their 7th of the game. So big throw on that one was Eddie Peters with a really nice break throw to Trucks Trimble. It was an inside out and went, just underneath the arm of his marker, and that left easy work for Trimble and Kincaid to finish up the point.
Sweeter than a Georgia peach, Justin Kincaid.
Don't know if you can hear Matty Francis's play-by-play announcements or his PA announcements here at the stadium, but doing a job I did in the first year of this franchise, and really does a great job helping to create a fun atmosphere here. Bill Holman and Andrew Gardner, general manager. The owners are down there selling merch. Tracy and Amy Neuendorf, and Mel Callahan's not here today, but she's our community relations director, so she does a lot at these games. It's a really great atmosphere, and it's the best sports bargain in Pittsburgh for sure. So you want to come out next year and make sure that you get a chance to see this team in action. Maybe check in on PittsburghThunderbirds.com, PGH or visit our Facebook page, and you can find season ticket information there. Just keep an eye on it, information about tryouts. Don't sleep on us during the winter, because the Thunderbirds don't sleep. They'll be getting ready. Nickel going deep. This goes just over the hands of Graber, but it was too much mustard on that huck. So Pat Hammonds, Peggy and Joe's boy, player coach, picks it up, throws it to Max Shepard. Looks like he's going to jack that forehand, but instead he sends a easy dump into Pat Hammonds' hands, and he finds Kenny Fردella. Chris Graber cutting in, throws an inside-out break forehand to Max Shepard, who's got the whole field in front of him. He whips a little forehand to Frdella right up the line, and we've got a pick called by Brian Heim, and so this one's going to come back and with 10 yards on it. But Graber cutting deep, and a nice shot from Frdella up the line to Graber will come back. That would have been a goal, but in this case it'll be just on this side of the 50-yard line for the Thunderbirds, and Frdella finds Graber on an in-cut this time and shuffled back to him. Now Hammonds has the disc in his hands, being marked by McClellan. Frdella with the disc again, and the lefty forehand again to Graber, again in the home corner of the end zone on the righty backhand side. And the Thunderbirds claim an 8-1 lead. Kenny Frdella doing some nice work on that, and clearly some chemistry with Chris Graber. Graber caught 2 goals on that one. One of them called back because of a pick call. And we get pick calls almost every game by this officiating crew. One of the complaints that a lot of AUDL players have is that picks just don't get called in the pro ranks, but that's not true here. Since the first year, the officiating crew has made certain to call the game as it should be called, and of course with help from the integrity rule in the AUDL and ultimate players being used to making their own calls, the games are generally played cleanly, and I think they're pretty well officiated, at least here in Pittsburgh. Referee Brian Heim, who is the head referee, is one of the constants in this officiating crew. Got about 2:25 left in the quarter, though we're still struggling to get the scoreboard up. Doesn't matter to you folks. Jess Mass being marked by Pat McMullen. She sends it back to Duhlman. Duhlman surveys what's in front of him, and it's a horizontal stack. He hits Schubert on an in-cut, and now he jacks one which pops up, and we got a little bit of a hospital pass. Underneath it is Noah Robinson. I'd bet the house on him, and I'd win. Now I've got two houses because Noah Robinson jumped up and clawed that out of the air. John Mast was there, and Eddie Peters steals a pass from a diving defender who tried to take it away from him. Duhlman now marking Anthony Kahn. Akon throws a floating huck, inside-out backhand. Dueling for it are Hunt and Robinson, and Robinson just can't quite get the read, and so Hunt sneaks in there and gets the block. Akon liking his target deep, and how can you not, right, with Noah Robinson going deep, but maybe needed to put that as a bender to the back corner instead of an inside-out into the middle of the end zone. That's what he did, and as a consequence, Duhlman will bring it up, and he'll have Hunt with him, and Jess Mass is the, oh boy, doesn't even matter who's on offense for the Mechanix because Eddie Peters got a block on Duhlman, got a hand block, and now Jonathan Mass going to pick it up and walk it back to the goal line. Meanwhile, the Thunderbirds pushing the stack slightly to the home sideline, giving Mast his backhand open. Jimmy Toll does a little shuffle against Schubert, and a high release from John Mast gives the Thunderbirds 9, and it is 9-1 favor of the T-Birds. Not sure how much time we've got left in the quarter, but it can't be much more than a minute or so.
Assisting on the goal, his second of the game, 24th of the year, number 2.
Suffice to say that somebody's got the official time, and it ain't us. But things change in the AUDL inside a minute. Clock rules are slightly different. And, of course, we get those exciting end-of-quarter jump ball plays very often deep in the end zone as teams try one last huck with a tall lineup up there. And the Thunderbirds certainly do have some height on the field. Ethan Beardsley, the Birdman, is out there, as is, it looks to me, like Stephen May. So two guys well over 6 feet. Pat Hammonds is a big guy. Shayna Repperman and Jordan Robarge also on the field for the Thunderbirds, as is Justin Kincaid, Peach, and Max Shepard getting ready to pull, so you know it's going to be a good one. Meanwhile, getting ready to receive for the Mechanix, looks like we've got McClellan, Schubert, Hunt, Allman. Once they start moving, it'll be clear who's out there. Nichols out there. I think Hunt maybe is not out there. Austin Johnson. Disc is now the pull received and now back in the hands of Josh Leiter. McClellan sends it to Leiter, who sends it back to him. Now coming into little in-cut is Austin Johnson. Aggressive defense against the mark now with Josh Leiter. Peach marking him. McClellan sends it across the field. Another double team. A lot of double teaming. Chris Allman passing out of that double team. Disc now finally passes midfield, and it is thrown up a beautiful huck from number 26, Billy Manwaring, which finds Nickel in the back of the end zone, but he can't hold on to it. And he puts it on the turf. And the Thunderbirds call a timeout. It's hot, and it might simply be a matter of wanting to preserve the legs of this team, that not wanting to put the disc in play after playing defense, but Pat Hammonds puts the disc down. His team, along with assistant coach Dave Leonetti, comes out to join him. And so Thunderbirds, probably with very little time left in the half, Doesn't look like they're changing a lot of personnel. Some water bottles coming out, but not a lot of substitutes. Looks like it was just an opportunity to figure out, first of all, how much time they have to score this point, and hopefully they're getting that information now. We are not getting that information, but I can tell you that the entire stadium crew seems to be here with us in the booth trying to figure out how to get this scoreboard working. And the lineup remains the same. Hammonds, Robarge, Shepard, Shayna Repperman wearing her brother's old number, number 6, 28, Ethan Beardsley, Peach Kincaid, Steve May. Meanwhile, doesn't look like a lot of subs came on the field for the Mechanix either. Nickel goes to take up the mark, playing in the front of the stack against Shepard, and Robarge guarding the handlers will be Austin Johnson and Josh Leiter. And then further back, Paul McClellan. Very, very deep for the Mechanix is Nolan Hunt. Steve May takes a big bending throw, gets it to Max Shepard. Shepard throws a quick fake and then jacks a high backhand. Ethan Beardsley underneath it. It will make it into the end zone. Chris Allman is also there, and the Birdman reaches up and with that claw pulls it down to give the Thunderbirds their 10th goal. And the horn goes off to signal the end of the quarter. So the Thunderbirds couldn't have asked for much more. It's 10-1, favor of your Pittsburgh Thunderbirds. Looking here, Thomas Robinson asks us, is there a video stream anywhere? Thomas, we're sorry, there isn't. We are not streaming this game. You'll be able to see the video of it. Video is being taken, and we will edit it the next day or so and merge it with this radio broadcast on Radio 41.2 The Berg, and you'll be able to see it then. In the meantime, I'm just doing my best to convey to you what's happening on the field in front of me, because I have to be your eyes and ears.
Thanks, man.
Television not working. Meanwhile, we have one of the two scoreboards up and running. And with 0 seconds left in this quarter and 12 minutes left in the next one, it is 10-1 favor of the Thunderbirds. And so thanks very much to the Duquesne Stadium crew. And hey, Thomas Robinson says, thank you. Happy to listen in. Thomas, happy to have you listening in. We don't know if you might be one of only a few who are listening today. Alex Needles, member of the Thunderbirds organization for a long time, and of course a fan, listening in. Caitlin Brandkamp, happy to see that you're on the line. And, right now, looks like we've got an intimate little gathering. Think of it as a fireside chat. And I'm FDR. And let me just bring the game to you like they did in the golden age of baseball. Thunderbirds, a lot of happy faces in that huddle we can see here from the press box. And again, things couldn't be going that much better, everything going to plan. Meanwhile, on the field, Jimmy Toll crosses midfield with this throw to Ethan Beardsley, and Ethan Beardsley airs out a forehand. Max Shepard, oh my goodness, he gets a left hand on it and then crashes into a metal bike rack style barrier. If he had laid out for it, he might have gotten it, and that would have been something to celebrate, because Ethan Beardsley very rarely throws downfield. So the Thunderbirds, receiving the pull with the opportunity to convert right away, do not. And Kenny Fridella manages to get in front of Danny Hunt and deflect the disc, but Danny Hunt holds on to it, and then he throws a low line drive down the field to Jeff Schubert, who bobbles it. It was just beyond his reach. He laid out for it in a kind of heroic bid. Directing traffic, Jimmy Toll sends Kenny Fridella deep and then throws him up a blade. Fridella makes a move in on it, but Paul McClellan had a better angle on it, and that was probably, it's going with the wind, but I think Kenny probably wanted to throw it a little bit further. Now McClellan has the disc. It's 10 yards outside of the goal line for the defensive goal line for the Mechanix, and now Schubert, catching a swing, puts one up, and a lot of company for the intended receiver, who was number 27, Joe Rogers, including big Ethan Beardsley, who simply said, thank you, but no thank you. That one's not going to land. It did eventually on the turf, not in the hands of the Mechanix receiver. And now Danny Hunt goes to mark Max Shepard, who steps out, throws an easy forehand over the head of an in-cutting Jimmy Toll. Jeff Schubert intercepts it, finds Hunt. Hunt sends it back to Duhlman. Duhlman looking at a vertical stack, and he finds Schubert on the home sideline over here. He laces an inside out to a strike-cutting Danny Hunt. Hunt shoots it back to him, and now Hunt has the disc in his hands, being marked by Max Shepard, and throws an inside out into the end zone. And we had a layout which came out when the receiver hit the ground, and we'll get you his name in just a second. It was a nice throw by Hunt, and found its receiver, but was not caught. We got a travel on the Jonathan Mass throw, and by the way, that thrower was PJ Saba. I'm sorry, the receiver was PJ Saba, who dropped the disc in the end zone. Speaking of in the end zone, that's where Jonathan Mast is, 10 yards deep in his own end zone with McClellan marking him. Disc is sent into the middle of the field for Della, who throws a touch pass up to Max Shepard, jumps up and gets it with two hands, and immediately jacks a forehand to Robinson, who is being marked by Schubert, tallest guy on the field and the shortest guy on the field, and guess who wins it? The short guy, little man Schubert, who immediately calls a timeout. And I will tell you that there is at least a foot of difference between Robinson and Schubert, but Schubert gets the angle and bats it away from Robinson. So you can't blame Max Shepard for loading up that throw. And a little bit of a different flavor to the beginning of the second half than we had at the first. The Thunderbirds came out with 3 quick breaks to lead off the first half. Meanwhile, with 2 minutes, make that 3 minutes gone, we got 8:56 remaining in the second quarter. Thunderbirds still lead 10-1, but have been unable to capitalize on receiving the pull. And they will come out on defense as Schubert gets a nice block on Noah Robinson, and the Mechanix take over. Looks like Jess Mast is ready to take the field. Josh Leiter. Also, Nickel standing in the huddle. McClellan will stay on the field. Chris Allman, not a surprise that he's out there. And I'm guessing Manwaring will also be on the field for the Mechanix. Finally, Nolan Howard. So that rounds up the offense. Howard, McClellan, Allman, Manwaring, Jessica Mast, Josh Leiter. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds will counter with Pat McMullen, Jordan Robarge, Anthony Kahn, Trucks Trimble, Justin Peach Kincaid, Eddie Peters, and looks like it's going to be person defense against a horizontal stack. Nolan cuts in, that's looked off, and instead the disc finds its way into the hands of Nickel. Nickel shuffles it over to Allman, and he centers the disc, or at least comes close to it, and then an inside out finds its way into the hands of Nolan Howard. Howard sends it back to Manwaring, who's handling, and then he throws one down the field that was intended for Jess Mast, but it was just too far out in front of her, and there was too much traffic, and so Dylan Tranquillo pulls it down. Now Anthony Kahn throws a high release to Trucks Trimble in the end zone, and the Thunderbirds with a hold. It took a while, 3 minutes and 35 seconds, but it's 11-1, favor of the T-Birds. To borrow from Billy Joel, it's a pretty good crowd for a Saturday out here on this hot evening up on the bluff, and the fans definitely pushing back into the shade. We see Divya Rao Heffley and her family out there, and she's waving her hands for one of those minis, and so the minis are going out into the crowd because we all know that the Huckett bucket will be filled up, so you can buy yourself a chance to throw a mini into the Huckett bucket, and I think there's still $400 left there. So that's some of the fun stuff that happens at the half and quarter breaks. Huckett bucket usually at the third quarter break. So we're happy to see so many Thunderbirds fans out. We'd like to see even more of them next year. Thunderbirds up here on the bluff have not been able to match the kind of attendance they were able to generate in their first year, and that's been true all the way along. And that's another issue, another question mark for Thunderbirds management to solve, not for lack of trying, but definitely on the agenda. Need to get fannies in the seats, for sure. This handcuffs Hunt, nearly lets it get away from him, and then two Mechanix receivers cross wires, lay out in front of each other, but the disc stays in their possession. And now Schubert looking downfield for Joe Rogers, but getting yet another block. Let's see, who was that on the block? That was Peach. Peach with the block. Now Anthony Kahn takes a pass from Pat Hammonds, looks downfield, sends one up the line, but he misses on that pass to Shayna Repperman. Schubert runs by her. Now Hunt with the disc. They're in the Thunderbird zone, but just inside it. Now back outside at midfield. Hunt with the disc. And a beautiful block. Hey, Kahn. Hey, you deserve that one, buddy. You have been laying out all season. Finally lays out and gets a block at midfield. And Trimble goes deep for Pat Hammonds. Hammonds puts one up, and a greatest attempt. And it is caught by A. Kahn going out of bounds. Trimble throws it back inbounds, and caught on the goal line by Akon. It finds its way back to Pat Hammonds, and then Akon catches it. So he catches the goal, and he catches the greatest attempt. Scott Trimble going out of bounds, leaping out of bounds, had nothing to do but throw that backhand back in, and a greatest. And you see Trimble congratulating his teammates, and a little fist pump there, no doubt, and a very alert play by Akon, who gets bookends on that play with a big layout big layout block, and then a grab first on the greatest, which he catches at the one, and then from his captain, Pat Hammonds, for the goal. So that was one of the plays of the season so far, one to remember here in this last game, and it's a break that gives the Thunderbirds a 12-1 lead. But got to feel good for Akon. He is a guy who doesn't present as he doesn't have that AT speed. He doesn't have the leaping ability of a Noah Robinson, but he plays with so much grit and has just laid out all season, laid in games with the Thunderbirds were losing, and he's rewarded with a layout block. Nolan Howard has the disc now. Sends it to an in-cutting Allman. Allman shuffles it to Leiter. They're now at midfield. Thunderbirds playing a person-to-person, but playing loose on the handlers. Jessica Mass corrals the disc, sends one to Manwaring just behind him, but he pulls it back, and then Dylan Tranquillo intercepts his backhand attempt into the end zone. He was looking, I think, for nickel, but now he immediately goes deep, brings it back in, and John Mast hits in. So Dylan Tranquillo playing dominator against nickel, saying, stop me if you can. Max Shepard won't give him that chance. He airs one out. A beautiful throw to Jimmy Tull all the way across the field. A huge righty forehand, which traveled 60 yards in the air to find Jimmy Tull in stride. Looked as if it was possible that the Mechanix defender, which appears to be Chris Allman, might have had an angle on that, but indeed no. It was perfectly placed by Max Shepard for a Thunderbirds goal to go up 13-1.
Max Shepard assisting. It started the day in 60th of the year.
Got 6:21 remaining. And I'm going to make sure that I'm correct about the score. I've got 13-1 on my sheet, but looking at the scoreboard right now, it's 12-1. I'm not sure whether we've just not added one, and Maddie Francis doing double duty as scoreboard operator and PA announcer just gave us the update. It's 13-1 Thunderbirds, so T-Birds getting no resistance. Got naked Bill Holman interviewing a fan down on the field, and not sure what tomfoolery and chicanery he's up to, but wearing his trademark dark blazer, even in this heat, and his gold bandana, part of the fun when you're down here at the stadium. Liam and Vats are listening on the drive out to Worlds. And so we wish them both great luck out there. Liam, Vats, have a great time at World Ultimate Club Championships. A lot of folks headed out there from Pittsburgh to play or to spectate. It's in Cincinnati. And it's just a festival every couple of years. The World Ultimate and Club Championships were some of the, it's not national teams that play at the WUCC, but rather club teams. And every country, based on a formula that has to do with how many teams play and how strong those teams are, gets a certain allotment, and certainly the United States always has a big contingent, but some perennials who we love to see at WUCC's Venezuela, Colombia with their fabulous Revolution Ultimate program coming up with men's and women's teams to play this year. Always fun to watch. The Japanese teams come with their particular style, which is relentlessly fast-paced. And so that'll be fun to watch. So if you get a chance to go out to WUCC's in Cincinnati, don't miss it. They are a lot of fun. Meanwhile, speaking of a lot of fun, winning is fun, and the Thunderbirds are doing plenty of it right now. 13-1, and they're getting ready to pull as they have so much. I want to say hello to Mom and Dad Robinson. Margaret Robinson, Noah Robinson's mom, thanks us for the program, and thank you for the compliment. Mrs. Robinson, here's to you. Sure, that's not the first time you've heard that, but they are happy to hear their son, the Big Cat, they call him, and all that he's accomplished for the Thunderbirds and for Pitt this year. Give you a little update on Pittsburgh men's and club teams that were out in Denver, men's and mixed club team. But in the meantime, disc is right out in front of the Detroit goal, and it lands in the hands of Pat Hammonds. It was an errant throw, and he looks for Steve May, who circles underneath it and catches it. So before we could even have 30 seconds elapse, the Thunderbirds stymie the Mechanix, who were unable to move the disc among their handlers effectively. Thunderbirds not even challenging that hard, but, you know, it's not going to take too long for Detroit to get tired out here. Tired and disheartened, too.
That Thunderbirds goal makes it 14-1.
So it's 14-1, 5:53 left.
Assisting on the goal, player coach number 41, Pat.
I want to say hello to, speaking of Pat Hammonds, who got the assist on that, Peggy and Joe Hammonds, who are probably listening out in Radnor. We always love to say hello to them. They have been faithful fans of our live stream, whether it's audio, video, many cameras, one camera, sideline commentary from the booth. We can always count on them, and we want to wish them the best as always. Pull goes up. Coming out of the sun, Josh Leiter shields his eyes, catches it, throws it to his partner in handling in a horizontal stack. And coming down, Chris Allman gets bumped by Anthony Kahn, and they're talking to each other. It doesn't seem like there's any ill will there, just an accidental bump, and you get 10 yards for that. Allman laces one to Nolan Howard, who finds in the middle of the field Nickel. Nickel looks back, and he finds McClellan. McClellan to Leiter. Little handler weave going on. Howard popping in for it. Tries to get Schubert with a pop-out cut being covered by Shayna Repperman, but it's a little bit too close to the ground for Schubert, even though Schubert, too, is close to the ground. Max Shepard picks up the disc, looks to throw a huck, but doesn't find what he wants, so instead sends it to Eddie Peters, who finds Trucks Trimble. Disc hasn't moved downfield at all, but now Trucks Trimble changes that. He sees McMullen downfield, and a beautiful catch block by Josh Leiter. That one needed a little bit more altitude, but Leiter made sure, jumped up and caught his D. Meanwhile, disc is corralled by Manwaring, who bobbled it, and now Schubert has it. They approach midfield, and then this one is jacked up to Manwaring, and underneath it is Eddie Peters and Manwaring. Peters gets the angle and jumps up, and before Manwaring can secure it, he blocks it in the Thunderbirds' end zone, so the T-Birds will go the other way with 4:30 remaining and a 14-1 lead. Peters with the disc, vertical stack in front of him, throws a little inside out to McClellan, who finds him again, finds Max Shepard. Shepard catches it, reaches back with his left hand, falls down, stands up, being marked by Howard, sends it back to McClellan, and now across the field to Shayna Repperman. Hear Team Repperman cheering in the stands. They're out here eagerly awaiting the return of the air traffic controller, Anson Repperman. Nice pass from Akon to Kincaid, and Peach goes across the field to Trimble, who catches the disc in the end zone in front of a laying out Nickel. And Nickel stays on the ground, Kevin Nickel, and signals to the referee that he's not 100%. My guess is that he might be suffering from cramps right now.
Assisting on the goal, his
he stands up, and if he had a cramp, seems to have worked itself out. Maybe he just got a little bit dinged up on that attempted layout there. But a really, really nice throw that finds Trucks Trimble, and that was a throw from Anthony Kahn. So, Kahn having a good game, making a statement. Thunderbirds also making a statement with 3:46 remaining in the first half. The Thunderbirds lead 15-1. Very little resistance being put up by the guys and gal from the Motor City. Promised you a look in on the South Division of the AUDL as you get ready for the playoffs and championship weekend. Dallas with an authoritative lead over the Raleigh Flyers, 13-1. Raleigh at 10-4, so the top two spots in that division are pretty much secured. But then, right behind them, there's a little bit of a logjam. Got some action, so we'll tell you about that in just a moment. Danny Hunt picks up the disc, puts it in play at the D. Offsides call. Jess Mast has an opportunity to look deep, but pulls it back instead and throws it to Hunt, who cuts behind her towards the Thunderbird sideline. He throws a nifty little inside out to an in-cutting Austin Johnson. Johnson plays catch with Mast, and then he sends one out to Danny Hunt, who goes down on the ground to protect it. He throws a no-look inside out to Joe Rogers. Joe Rogers now 15 yards from pay dirt, sends it back to Danny Hunt, getting a lot of touches here. He throws another inside out. He likes that throw a lot. Johnson catches it on the one and thinks he's in, holds it up to signal a goal, but then realizes that he's actually 2 yards out. But no problem, throws an inside out to Rogers. So inadequate marking there to stop the inside outs, and the Mechanics get their second goal. Somehow I don't think that we're going to see a timeout in conference on the sideline to figure out how to stop the Detroit machine. The engine's still sputtering on that old car, trying to rumble to life. Meanwhile, we've got number 5, Nolan Howard, coming across the field to the Thunderbirds sideline, probably seeking the help of Thunderbirds trainer from UPMC Sports Medicine, Anthony Mobile, who ministers to both teams while they're here. Hopefully he's all right. Maybe just needs a little strain attended to, but he's underneath the tent, and Anthony is going to work on him. So hopefully he is okay. He's been playing a lot of points. Hey, Brady, I see you. Brady just logged on through Facebook Live. Always love to see another listener. Party's getting big. Might have to move it to the living room. All right, Kenny Ferdella fields the pull. Jonathan Mast has it. He's met by Joe Rogers. He breaks to Kenny Ferdella, lateral break, and then Kenny on the break side finds Ethan Beardsley, and Beardsley looks downfield, and he's got his arms wide open, jumping up and down, begging for the disc right now, is Chris Graber. And if there was ever a time for Ethan to launch a second downfield throw, that was it, because nobody was covering Graber, and now nobody in the end zone is covering him again. But this throw takes him right to the sideline. Fortunately, Jimmy Toll manages to keep it close enough to the sideline for Graber to tow it in, and Thunderbird sees a 16-1 lead as we're down to 2:39. Hey, it's Shelly Diamichis. Shelly, unless I am mistaken, you are tuning in from the great state of Texas, the Longhorn State. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but happy to have you on board as always. The Diesel, not in uniform tonight, but the Diamichis is being represented by Shelly, who tunes into our stream from time to time. Sorry we don't have any pictures for you, Shelly, but happy to give you the call here radio style. Brady thanks us for the shout out. Hey, instant service is what we're all about, my friend. Hope to see you soon. Pittsburgh Rec Leagues entering their playoffs right now. The Wednesday and Monday mixed leagues going into the playoff stretch, and so we'll be interested to see how they play out. It's surprising how important those rec leagues are to so many players, but some players will never get an opportunity to win a championship in the country or the world, but the coveted Pittsburgh popsicle plaque, that's still on the line. I reconditioned it myself last year, so I know. Anyway, Mechanics with the disc. Leiter playing catch with Danny Hunt, who has a lot of stamina. He's been working hard. McClellan's got it. And he finds number 19, Austin Johnson. He's double teamed, but he passes out of it back to McClellan. They're flirting with midfield, but still in their defensive zone are the Mechanix as the clock ticks down under 2 minutes. Isolated at the back of the stack, Dylan Tranquillo going for a block against Austin Johnson. He taps it once and then taps it again. So a deep throw from Hunt to Johnson, but Tranquillo had the angle and the throw did not get over his head. He had to throw a fade, and that one simply went up the forehand sideline. There was no way that Dylan was going to miss that disc unless it went over his head. If it went over his head without bending towards the goalpost, then it would have simply gone out of bounds. Pat Hammonds laces one up to Anthony Kahn, and Kahn throws one out into space that is just a little bit too much for Trucks Trimble. So would have been another terrific play for Kahn, but he put a little bit too much mustard on the throw, didn't have much time to turn it around, and now Leiter picks up the disc on his own goal line and then centers it to Hunt. Hunt shoots it across the field. Johnson has it. Fakes a big one, sends it back to Hunt, and Trucks Trimble was there and probably should have gotten a foul for kind of crashing into Hunt, but he doesn't. Instead, Leiter's got the disc, and we are under a minute. 16-2 is the score. Scuba to the break side, and Johnson loads one up. Going deep. He's got man-wearing. No, I'm wrong about that. He doesn't have man-wearing. He's got Saba. Saba catches on the goal line in front of Robarge. Sends it back to Hunt. Jess Mass was working against Pat Hammonds, and the throw went up to her from Hunt, and it just went beyond her. She's pointing to herself, saying it was a misread, but I would blame the thrower for that. And the T-Birds, with 30 seconds left, call a timeout to try to end this half with a score that would give them a 17-2 lead. It's 16-2 right now. And unfortunate Jess Mass, terrific player, and she was working against a much bigger player in Pat Hammonds, but she snuck behind him. And that throw needed more touch than it had, sailed towards the sideline, and had a little bit too much on it. Needed more tracking back into the end zone rather than going for that back pylon. Jess couldn't quite catch up with it. Both teams are going to change personnel right now. Thunderbirds are going to come out with an offensive team. And by the way, this is an auspicious moment. We got a comment from Joe Hammonds thanking us for keeping in touch. No problem, my friend, and glad to see you on the stream. So hopefully see you out in Pittsburgh sometime soon. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Thunderbirds personnel. Offensively, Kenny Fridella will go to pick up the disc, and he'll be complimented by the handling partners, Jonathan Mast in the middle, and looks like anchoring the top of a vertical stack will be Max Shepard, who will try to get open in isolation against, looks like it'll probably be Mr. Nickel, Kevin Nickel, who has recovered from whatever it was that was ailing him. Meanwhile, in the stack, behind him, Noah Robinson and Ethan Beardsley. Looks like we might have Chris Graber and Jimmy Toll there. And the two smaller guys come in real quick to handle. Now it's in Jimmy Toll's hands, and we've got Noah Robinson and Ethan Beardsley deep. With 21 seconds left, the possibility for a jump ball is always there, but instead we've got a give and go going on, and a comical travel by Jonathan Mast, who he fakes a pass and then runs and stops, and then with a big grin on his face runs back 10 yards. 7 seconds left. The clock didn't stop. I don't know if he knows that. And Matty reminds him, he throws up a high release, and Max Shepard has no time to throw it. And now there's a discussion because the clock should have stopped on the violation in the last 30 seconds. And assistant coach Dave Leonetti is going out on the field to talk about it with Brian Heim. What happened there was, with about 20 seconds, Jonathan Mast traveled, as we said, and the clock continued to run as they reset, and certainly the clock should have stopped. And so there's a conversation now as the officials convene on the field. Hey, number 11, Ryan Ciccione, we see you. Glad you can hear us. Sorry not to have you here on this warm day. We could use those legs. But Ryan is listening in. And we get a signal from Andrew Miller, the side judge, to us up in the booth to add 11 seconds to the clock. So Thunderbirds will get to replay that one. Jonathan Mast with his foot on the home sideline, the righty backhand sideline, and his foot also on the 50-yard line. So right at midfield and 40 yards from pay dirt. And he is being marked by Chris Allman. Flanking him to his right is his reset, Max Shepard. Is being guarded by Kevin Nickel. Meanwhile, at the front of the stack, there's an inside out to Noah Robinson. He's got 9 seconds. Sends it back to Shepard. Shepard looking for that crossfield, and he sees Beardsley cutting that way. Jimmy Toll is also there, and Jimmy jumps up to pull it down with a second left. If he had let it go, it would have nestled in the hands, the claws of the Birdman. But Jimmy, as he's done all year in this breakout season for him, leaps up and ends the point with a stabbing grab. He is not a tall guy until he jumps, at which point he becomes one of the Thunderbirds' big threats in the air. So another crossfield shot from Max Shepard, this one to Jimmy Toll. 17-2, favor of the T-Birds. They will pull once again, and we are down to 1 second remaining in this half.
And scoring for your Thunderbirds, his third game, 39th of the year, number 48.
In their inaugural season, the Thunderbirds set the all-time single-game goals record against Detroit. I think that they scored 44 that night. That record doesn't appear to be in danger today because it's just too hot and the track's a little bit too slow. Also, I don't think that the Thunderbirds are going to try to pour it on that much. They're not out to set any records. But what they might do is set an all-time AUDL record for margin of victory. I don't know what that would be, but we're going to try to check it at halftime and get that information for you. And if we do, that might be something to keep an eye on in the second half that will be, for good or ill, bereft of suspense with regard to the outcome of the game, unless there is another crew of Detroit Mechanix, possibly androids built by General Motors, and a roller pull goes out of bounds at the about 25 yards. Josh Leiter's going to pick it up. So basically, this is to allow the Thunderbirds the opportunity to establish a double team on the thrower. He's not very tall. Kenny Fridella and Eddie Peters flanking him. The best he can do is just throw this one in the end zone. And I don't think that he throws up a scuba that falls like a dying duck near Dave Angeletti on the sidelines. There was no hope that it was going to be caught. And so half number 1 comes to an end. Hi, everybody. We're back and just in time for the third quarter of what is right now a very one-sided contest between the Thunderbirds and the Detroit Mechanix. Thunderbirds leading 17-2. We were unable to find out, though maybe GM Andrew Gardner can tell us what the all-time record is in the AUDL for margin of victory. We'll give you some other stats in the meantime, though. But play is underway, and the Mechanix take the pull. Start the half. Paul McClellan's got the disc. There was a whistle on the field, though, and running in to hang on to it was Joe Rogers. He had to go down on the ground and pick it up off of his shoe tops. But there's some discussion among the officials. While they're talking, we'll let you know that for the Thunderbirds, we had 2 players with 3 goals. Trucks Trimble and Jimmy Toll, 3 apiece. Fill you in on the rest of the stats soon, but meanwhile Rogers sends one to Schubert, who leaps up, pulls it in just past midfield, and he throws a blading hammer that hits his receiver, Paul McClellan, right in the hands, but it was just coming down too hard and ended up falling to the turf harmlessly. And now Scott Trimble takes one from Akon at midfield. He's on the far sideline, righty forehand sideline, throws one a little inside-out break to Eddie Peters just to reposition the disc, and now it's in the middle of the field. Robarge has it right on the big red, white, and blue D in the middle of the field, and then he throws a hammer out into space, which Trucks Trimble jumps up and adds to that goal total, and he had defense coming on fast. Austin Johnson was making a big bid for the disc, making a hard charge for it, and Nolan Howard was right there. Actually, Joe Rogers. Neither one mattered because Trucks jumped up, and having one of his best games of the season so far, he pulls one down, and it's 18-2 to favor the Thunderbirds, who break just as they did last game. The Thunderbirds go ahead and break to start the second half, as they did in the first half. And there you got it. Thunderbirds go up 18-2. Took about 50 seconds.
Third of the game, number 19, Jordan Robarge. And scoring for your Thunderbirds is fourth of the game.
Hey, told you I was going to tell you about the AUDL South. We got started. We never finished. So what we can report is that the Raleigh Flyers have the Austin Soul right behind them, or behind them at 7-7, and fighting it out for third place there in the AUDL South is the Atlanta Hustle. So looks like Raleigh and Dallas, and then either Atlanta or Austin to take that one there. Meanwhile, this disc is blocked or dropped twice, and by Howard, and now it's in the hands of Nickel. Nickel sends it back to Chris Allman, and they're about 20 yards outside the goal line. So Detroit moves the disc pretty quickly to start this point. Handler's just playing catch right now, and this one is blocked by Pat Mack. Nickel tried to sneak one around him to Leiter in the forehand corner, streaking towards that back cone, and he simply didn't get enough, and really probably didn't have the angle. McMullen had it cut off. So Pat Mack with a block, and now Pat Hammonds throws an inside out, which finds Max Shepard in stride, and Shepard unleashes one to Shayna Repperman, but neither she nor her defender can catch up to it. Kevin Nickel stampeding down and manages to pick up the disc. And this one is floated over the head of receiver Danny Hunt, but Leiter catches the errant pass, and now Nickel has it in his hands. Approaching midfield are the Mechanix. Leiter has nothing downfield, and so he sends it back to Chris Allman. Now Leiter throws to Danny Hunt between two double-teaming defenders, and now there's a double team and a triple team as three defenders arrive at one time. McMullen, Repperman, and Hammond, all of them had an opportunity to double team, and they all did. And that's not a double, that's a triple, that's illegal. They gain 10 yards. Now Hunt tries to catch up with a touch pass that came, I believe, from Nolan Howard, but it is just beyond his reach. And so the Thunderbirds will get the chance to break these Mechanix again as Pat Hammond picks up the disc. He's got McMullen to his right. He sends it out into space to Max Shepard, cutting second out of the stack. He throws a big forehand fake, but then sends it back to McMullen. He whips it across the field to Hammonds. He throws the big backhand fake and then puts an inside out to an in-cutting Steve May. He throws it past midfield, and now Max Shepard has it, and he's got Peach making an S cut. Throws it up, but instead Repperman is there. Is she going to catch it? She does! Shayna Repperman. I think it was originally intended for Peach, but Repperman makes the cut and gets a big cheer as Alex Hunt, laying out in front of her, is unable to pull it down. Shayna Repperman with, I believe, her first goal for the Thunderbirds, certainly in front of a home crowd, and she makes it 19-2, favor of the Thunderbirds. So nothing that the Mechanix have done has been able to slow the Thunderbirds up very much. And Shayna Repperman getting congratulations from AT, Alex Thomas, Owen Watt, Kenny Fridella. She's got a big smile on her face, and I'm sure so does her brother, Anson Repperman, who is here in the stands, along with another Thunderbirds dignitary on injured reserve this year, Steve Mogilski, rehabbing a knee. And I talked to Steve Moe. Steve has helped to start yet another men's club team, third team, Space Force. So those of you who are worried about Space ISIS, and who isn't, Steve assures us that Space Force is on the case. And so rest easy, ladies and gentlemen. Steve Mogilski in Space Force, he is trying to enlist me as a lieutenant, mostly because I've got a really cool Space Force t-shirt. This one in the hands of McClellan, who finds the disc again right in the middle of the field, and he jacks one up Scott Trimble pursuing, but can't catch up to the disc before it is pulled down by number 25, PJ Saba, to give the Mechanix their third goal of the game. Took them quite a while to get there. We've had so far 27 minutes and 50 seconds of play, and the Mechanix will get to pull again.
Who got it through their gauntlet. She said, I can cheer louder than your entire crowd. I
wanted to update you a little bit on some progress by the Pittsburgh club teams. Before we do that, let's catch up with the halftime statistics. And they are gaudy. Max Shepard with 4 assists, and he's added to that. And then Dylan Tranquillo with 3 blocks. So those are your Thunderbirds leaders so far. Can't tell what's going on in the crowd, but a raucous cheer. And speaking of action on the sidelines, we got action on the field. And wow, Max Shepard makes an interesting choice. He had Jimmy Toll and Ethan Beardsley splitting the defense going to the end zone, and only one of them was covered, and it was the guy he threw it to. He tries to force one to Jimmy Toll, and it ends up getting blocked. So now Danny Hunt's got the disc, and he cranks a huck deep to, looks like it's the Leiter. And Leiter makes a heroic bid to try to toe that disc in on the sidelines. It's the far sideline, the righty forehand sideline in the end zone, but the disc is out of bounds. Max Shepard picks it up, is marked by Leiter, knocks the pylon over, and Danny Hunt intercepts, or actually blocks, his inside-out up-the-line shot to an incoming Jimmy Toll, and then he sends it back and receives the pass back, and then finally completes it. I believe that was Josh Leiter, completes the pass to in the end zone to Nolan Howard. So scoring a couple in a row, it looks like 19-4. Mechanix moving to the mercury on their side, moving just a little bit. Speaking about heating up, let's talk a little bit about Temper. Pittsburgh Temper is the men's A team in town. And they went out to Denver to play in one of the early season tournaments, a kind of season opener. And they were seeded 16th coming into the tournament. And folks, guess where they finished? I'm going to hold off on telling you and just tell you some of the teams that they managed to beat. Pony, who will be adding Jimmy Mickle and Bo Kittredge later on. But they beat Pony from New York. They managed to also beat Dig from Boston and Sockeye. They came in second. They lost to Johnny Bravo in the final by just 2 points. So a huge statement by Temper. But talking to Alex Thomas before the game, he said, early season wins don't mean anything, and early season seeding doesn't mean anything. So Temper definitely, though, putting the world on notice that just like Pitt made a run at college nationals, they might be in a position to do the same thing at club nationals. A high release from Jimmy Toll to Eddie Peters in the middle of the field in the attacking zone. Now Pat McMullen puts it up, and it's intercepted by Jess Mast. It flies a little bit above its target, and Jess Mast takes the disc and puts it in play at the goal line, fakes a forehand and pops a backhand high release that finds Joe Rogers. Rogers marked aggressively by Trucks Trimble. He finds Mast on a strike cut, a little closer to the middle of the field. She's marked by Robarge. She is quick. And getting it back to her is Saba. Jess kind of quarterbacking the offense. She throws a nifty little strike pass, a backhand floater, which finds Dolman. Dolman sends it back to Mast. Mast getting almost every other pass right now. And Anthony Kahn unable to put enough pressure to shut her down. But Austin Johnson throws a beautiful crossfield backhand to Schubert, catches it on the 2 on the other sideline. He had Schubert running straight down that sideline, and Schubert catches the disc, and then once again the conservation of greatness, or in this case conservation of okayness principle, comes into play. Schubert tries to throw a hammer into the end zone, but it is rejected either by Peters or Trimble. Couldn't tell for sure. Meanwhile, Trimble gets the block. Eddie Peters looks off an up-the-line cut And we have a strip on the goal line, I believe. He looked away from a cut just 1 second too late, and instead threw it into the middle of the field to Jordan Robarge, who jumps up to catch it. McClellan right there on the defense, but actually ends up taking it out of his hands. No argument on the strip call. So Robarge handling with Peters and McMullen. Now Trimble's got it, and he throws an inside-out huck that turns, a bending forehand that was low, a line drive, and that turned over, deflected off of Austin Johnson, and went by Anthony Kahn. If Akon had read the deflection and just conceded it, that Johnson was going to get the block, he might have been able to get the rebound, but no such luck there, and it would have been a remarkable play. Duhlman has the disc right back in his end zone, middle of the field, looking for some help, and he finds it in the form of Joe Rogers. Rogers laces it out to Saba. Saba being marked by Trimble. He's got a deep cutter in the form of Schubert. Jimmy Toll giving chase, but he won't catch up. Schubert tries to milk it, but just gets to the goal line. He floats a little high release to Rogers, and Rogers comes down with it. And suddenly, Detroit is on the board again. And I believe that they've run off 3 straight. It's 19-5. So a heck of a performance by Temper. Alloy didn't fare as well, won a game out in Denver, but a lot can happen between now and the end of the season. So Pittsburgh club scene heating up, and if you want to be a part of it, then Pittsburgh Ultimate is what you Google, and you'll see information on how to get in touch with any of the club teams. Tryouts are pretty much over, but it might not hurt to check them out and see where you might fit into all of this. And of course, there are ample opportunities to play in Pittsburgh rec leagues every season, and so we hope that you'll go to Pittsburgh Ultimate, just Google it, and click on that first link that comes up, and plenty of opportunities to play. Hey, I've got Kelsey Cowles and Chris Martin must be listening in on their own individual devices. Not sure, maybe Kelsey is canning in the cellar while Chris is woodworking upstairs, or maybe vice versa. Maybe Chris is finishing a cutting board for Kelsey to cut vegetables on that she has harvested, or could be the other way around. But if you're interested in delicious fresh canned food, from the ample garden of Chris and Kelsey, or in fine woodworking, you should check them out. We'll try to check in at the quarter break and give you their website if there's one to be given. Meanwhile, Kenny Fridella sends one up to Jimmy Toll, who pulls it down in the end zone in front of Joe Rogers, and the Thunderbirds very quickly strike back after Let me correct myself and tell you that I think that was Nolan Howard who was on the defense, but it was immaterial to Jimmy Toll. He simply made the catch, and Thunderbirds get into the 20s. It's 20-5. Favor of the Thunderbirds, 3:45.
Jimmy Toll! T-Birds up 20-5, 3:45 left in the third quarter.
All right, down here with Griffin, Jamie, and Jack at their first game. And
Laurie Bellaby says hello, and Alex Needles has come back from wherever he was and is logged on. David Chris, hi to you. Enjoy the luxury of greeting all of our listeners by name. Of course, we'd love to have a bigger audience, but so, call your friends, tell them what's going on, and if they want to hear some great Ultimate Radio on 41.2 The Berg, have them join in. If you're watching this as a delayed broadcast or a delayed stream, archived video, and you're wondering why we're so descriptive about where the disc is on the field and the fact that, for instance, Detroit is wearing jerseys with white jerseys, maroon sleeves, and maroon numerals, while the Thunderbirds are in their traditional black with that gold lightning bolt across the front and the back of the jersey and the Thunderbirds logo. It's because we're talking to people who can't see. We're on radio right now, or at least we're on Facebook Live audio, and so we can see, well, you can't, the fact that Austin Johnson just attempted to find Joe Rogers downfield with a forehand huck, but that it was too low. The receiver couldn't catch up with it, and with the score 20-5, Jordan Robarge is going to pick it up, send it out to McMullen across the field. Thunderbirds still in their area, but Max Shepard has it, and so that changes quickly, and he throws a beautiful flat forehand floating in space in front of Anthony Kahn, and he catches up with it without having to lay out in the back of the end zone, and then pulls up a little short. And Akon, hopefully not too badly hurt. It looks like he might have twisted his ankle as he corralled that disc. It was an awkward catch. He might have been better off, given that he's wearing some protection on his knees, simply going down and protecting the disc by getting on the ground. As it was, he's run up on the grassy embankment in the west end zone, and he's being attended to by Pat Hammonds and another teammate. Hopefully, he'll be okay. And it looks like maybe whoever is over there, and Anthony Mobile is headed there now. Anthony Mobile is the trainer for the Thunderbirds. And it looks to me like maybe Steve Angeletti is pushing on that foot of his. And that would suggest that maybe what he's got is a cramp. So be understandable. The heat still very hot, as America said, and Horse with No Name. The heat is hot, and the ground is dry, and the air is full of sound. The sound of a Thunderbirds drubbing of the DET Mechanix. It's 21-5, 2:45 remains here in the third quarter, and the disc settles into the hands of Chris Allman. Now Leiter's got it. He shuffles it back to Allman. And those two play catch. Third handler is Danny Hunt. Ryan Mario downfield. Also Kevin Nickel. Disc in Allman's hands. Thunderbirds in person defense, but with the handler sagging into the throwing lanes, daring them to break, which they've done reasonably well, and they just do again. Shayna Repperman rushes over to cover Kevin Nickel, and he attempts to find Josh Leiter cutting upfield, but there was just too much traffic. Leiter gets his hands on it once, twice, and then makes a bid to try to pull it off the ground before it hits, but he doesn't. And so Eddie Peters has it and launches one into space. Two Thunderbirds underneath it, also Chris Allman, and going up for it is another Chris Graber, and might have come down on Allman, and the trainer being signaled for, but the trainer is busy, and Allman writhing on the ground. Graber did go up and catch that, and we think that that goal is going to count. Didn't look like it was a foul. Could have been an issue with the principle of verticality, as you know. Maybe you don't. In ultimate, a player has the right to the space directly above him, and he has the right to land when he comes down. And it's possible that Graber went up and kind of went into the vertical space above Allman, and then when he came down, he landed on him. The referees, though, have not signaled a foul on the part of the receiver, Graber, who is concerned and kind of hovering nearby, and he comes over and speaks to Danny Hunt, shakes his hand, and says it looks like he's okay. Anthony Mobile made the 120-yard sprint all the way down the field. Graber's smiling now, and that indicates to me that probably Allman just got shaken up. Ryan Mario around him. And now it looks like Dave Leonetti has come over to join them. Thunderbirds are kneeling, a la youth soccer, tradition that's developed since I was a kid. So we're hoping everybody's okay down there, and that it's just that Chris Allman, captain of the Mechanics and player coach, is just taking his time getting up, and that Anthony Mobile's putting him through his paces and just making sure he's okay. We're not certain about the nature of the injury. It was a very nice catch by Graber. It was one that had a lot of air underneath it, and Graber went up, snagged it first, came down, and really probably a legitimate no-call situation. Graber stands up, seems to be holding his shoulder a little limp, but he's moving both of his arms, kind of grabbed at his midsection. He's going to walk over to the trainer's tent with Anthony. Got a round of applause. Coach Leonetti is there with him, and Detroit doesn't look too concerned. The score will count with 1:56 remaining in the third quarter. It's 22-5, and happy to report that that incidental contact did not result in a serious injury to Chris Allman. He looks uncomfortable, but he's smiling, and he and Anthony are talking and joking, and hopefully he'll be able to come back out and play some more. Charles Canham says, what's the real score? Shelley tells him 20-5, and I'm here to update you all. It is 22-5. So sorry if we're not doing a good enough job keeping you up to date on the score. We will try to be attentive to that. And Frank Sens, we are happy that you are enjoying this broadcast. We are enjoying having you with us. Thunderbirds will pull, and the defensive team they send out is one that looks very well equipped to score. Max Shepard with the disc, and with the flags now starting to calm down, less starch in them, resting almost on the poles. Max should have no trouble putting this in the end zone. Out there with him is Peach and Pat Hammonds. Pat McMullen leads them down the field. Disc does come down on the goal line. Jimmy Toll's also out there. Duhlman has the disc, laces it to an in-cutting Johnson. Johnson marked by Mast. Mast doesn't usually start points on defense, and both he and Jessica, his sister, are out there. Asked him before the game, "Who's your mom rooting for?" Jonathan said confidently, "She's rooting for me." Jessica says, "I don't know." She said, "My family's rooting for the Thunderbirds, but they're also rooting for me." They probably weren't rooting, if they're rooting for the Mechanix, for Austin Johnson's inside out that was blocked by Pat McMullen, who really had to defend himself from the disc, which came right at his face. Max Shepard finds Steve May about 25 yards outside the goal line, marked by McClellan. He sends it back. Nice inside out forehand break by McMullen to find Jonathan Mast. He throws a high release forehand that Jimmy Toll corrals in the end zone in front of both Schubert and Howard, and edges the score up. It is 23-5 with 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining here in the third quarter. That inside-out high release, I'm sorry, that high release forehand is a throw that has emerged in the last decade or so, and there are so many throws that have become weapons on the ultimate field that were either novelties or just non-existent when I started to play this game almost 30 years ago. The high-release forehand was certainly one of them, and that's a throw that's complemented by the offhand backhand high release. Sometimes, for instance, if you see a player forced to his forehand, let's say he's a righty, and he's got somebody cutting to the break right in front of him, maybe in the end zone, just for a little 10-yard throw, rather than trying to throw that high release forehand or a step around backhand or a push pass, you'll see a player go to his or her offhand and notch it right into the end zone. And so a lot of cool throws. Scoobers have become prevalent. We've seen a number of them thrown here tonight. Nobody better master of the Scoober than former Thunderbird number 71, Templeton Walcott III, a.k.a. Tad Whistle. Player for Temper, had a great weekend with his team. Jessica Mast can't quite pull this swing pass off of her shoe tops. It hits the ground, and she's marking Eddie Peters now, and he will be in a handling trio at the top of a vertical stack with Pat McMullen, who throws a high release over the top to Scott Trimble, who finds Shayna Repperman cutting with a perfect timing to the break from Scott Trimble, and she gets the throw from Trimble and a hug. And with 38 seconds remaining, Shayna Repperman, with her second goal of this contest, pushes the score to 24-5. 38 seconds remaining. Tori Rowland, back from the wild maybe. She was off camping, as she often is, or hiking, and maybe she's found a signal to listen to us, or maybe she's back in town. Either way, member of the Pittsburgh Supercell. And always great to hear from Tori. So welcome to the broadcast, or narrowcast as the case may be. And Tina Cole with a couple of fire emojis and an all right next to the score. Eddie Peters, we just met his son tonight, his new little baby, out here with his wife Kara in the stroller. And he's 2.5 months and cute as a bug, named Elliot. And we get the update that he is not yet rolled over, but that he's smiling and giggling, and lots of wonderful things to come for a great couple. Eddie gives a great deal to the community. He's played pro in both the AUDL and played, this one is jacked by McClellan to Joe Rogers, who's got company and deflects it and is unable to catch it on the rebound. He can't quite pick it up. And now we've got a timeout called by the Thunderbirds. Ethan Beardsley rushed to pick up the disc, but with 18 seconds left, they're going to try to get a taller team on the field, which means Ethan Beardsley won't have the disc in his hand. Instead, he'll be downfield. Probably a receiver on. With 18 seconds left, it's quite possible the Thunderbirds could work it down the field, but we might also see a late in the game huck, late in the quarter huck. So yeah, Shayna Repperman, 2 goals so far, a really perfectly timed cut right there, but that all started with a nice high release break from Pat McMullen to Trucks Trimble, and Trimble getting his name called all night long. Let's see who the Thunderbirds come out with to try to score this goal, and it looks like the lineup is not all that much changed from what we just saw out there on the field. Robarge, Peters, McMullen, Repperman, Trimble, Tranquillo, and Beardsley. Meanwhile, Mechanix, and we would like to welcome our friends from Detroit, some of you out here today in your Mechanix merch. And if you're interested in Thunderbirds merchandise, please visit PGHThunderbirds.org, and you can score some there. Probably going to be some of it on closeout. In the meantime, though, Mechanix, welcome to you from the Motor City. Hope you're enjoying our broadcast of the game. And coming out to try to stop the Thunderbirds from notching a 26 goal at the end of this quarter, you're going to counter with Austin Johnson, Danny Hunt. Looks to us like Joe Rogers, Jeff Schubert, Nolan Howard downfield, and looks like Ryan Mario at the very back. So it looks like, well, we had a false start there. Didn't wait for the whistle, so the Thunderbirds are going to start from in their end zone. And it looks like trying to disrupt things up front are Schubert and Hunt. That's Danny Hunt. And Johnson, and now Eddie Peters with the disc. There are 10 seconds left, and this one is tried to get it to Robarge, but a layout grab by a layout interception. Oh, and a beautiful layout grab. I didn't do a very good job with the action there, but Rogers laid out, intercepted that pass from Peters, and then a backhand is uncorked into the far backhand corner of the end zone, and Jeff Schubert lays out and rolls over, flips over to end the half with a goal for the Mechanix, and it's 24-6. So still 4 times the score. Kenny Fridella with a lefty forehand to start off the second quarter, and 12 seconds are gone. Max Shepard on the receiving end of that. Shep, of course, leading the team in assists in the first half, and now he picks up a goal. And with 11:48 remaining in this contest, Thunderbirds 25, Mechanix 6.
It's the last time you can get a mini disc from Bill Holman this season, folks.
So Max Shepard on the receiving end of a Kenny Fridella throw. And I was telling you how to get connected with pickup games in town. That's Facebook. Just search CALL space 4FOR space PGH space pickup. One word. And you can go ahead and ask to join that page, and you can join right away. And then you'll get the announcements about pickup. Usually Thursday nights at 6, CMU or Lower Frick. And to me, after all these years of playing in this town, playing mixed, playing men's, playing masters, playing grandmasters, I have to say that for me, pickup is still the platonic form of ultimate. It's really what it's supposed to be. Everybody comes out and plays. Nobody needs to keep score until people are ready to go home, and you remember the good stuff and wash the bad stuff off. Thunderbirds playing person-to-person defense against a horizontal stack. And the disc is sent up at midfield to Joe Rogers, who's being marked by Peach. Working very hard to get open against Pat Mack is Duhlman. Duhlman finds Ryan Mario. Ryan throws up a forehand that goes over the head of Scott Trucks Trimble and finds Schubert in the end zone. And that was a masterful throw by Mario. He was standing just about midfield, and he had the much shorter Jeff Schubert, who has not been in any way hindered by his lack of stature. He ended the previous quarter with a terrific layout, and he snuck behind Trucks Trimble, who's got at least 8-9 inches on him. But Mario just threw that perfect forehand bender over the defender and around him, and Schubert ran it down. Well done. Scores 25-7 favor of the Thunderbirds.
And if you didn't win, you can always buy one of these at the merchandise booth. We got it right up there. Last chance of the season to buy from an official merchandise booth seller. Otherwise, you got that online at PGH Thunderbirds.com.
Thunderbirds get ready to pull. Almost the entire field in shadow now. The temperature's starting to drop. Players looking a little bit more comfortable. And a pull goes up from the Mechanix. It's going to fall pretty short. Lands about 15 yards outside the goal line, and Jonathan Mast has it in the Thunderbirds' half of the field. But now Max Shepard right on that D at midfield. He throws a touch forehand up, and this looks like it could be a contest. Jimmy Toll goes up against Alex Hunt, gets first touch of the disc, deflects it, and Alex Hunt is there to pull it down with both hands. Now Hunt puts the disc in play by throwing a forehand to Danny Hunt. Not sure if they are related. Should have checked on that. Sorry about that. Maybe a Detroit fan listening can weigh in and let us know. Now Alex throws it back to Danny, and he is inside his end zone, marked aggressively by Kenny Fردella. He cranks a forehand up to Alex. So far, only those two have touched at this point on the possession, but that's going to change now as it's cranked across the field, a big backhand that finds Mario, and Ryan Mario sends it back into the middle of the field, right at that kickoff mark. 25 yards out from their goal line, still in their half of the field, and now Nolan Howard has it. And the Thunderbirds are making him work hard on defense. Mario works hard on offense, and Mario lays out past midfield with his left hand, pulls it down, sends it back to the middle of the field where it finds Alex Hunt. Danny Hunt next to him, working off the top of the stack is Howard. And Kevin Nickel finds it, passes out of it with an inside out into the middle of the field in the attacking zone now. Danny Hunt turns around in time to see a backhand find him, and then he throws it to Ryan Mario, cutting hard to the home backhand cone to notch the 8th goal for Detroit. So, nice work by the Mechanix, who were pressed by an aggressive Pittsburgh defensive team, and that's good to see. I mean, after all, Pittsburgh doesn't really have to play defense at this point. They could trade points and be happy with a very lopsided victory, but team hasn't shown that sort of lack of spirit and intensity all year long. Guys have laid out throughout games. They've come to the sidelines after good plays and bad to talk things over and try to figure out what they can do better, and I'm sure that will carry over into what we hope will be the second year of Pat Hammond's coaching leadership. Of course, Pat didn't think he was going to be playing much this year, rehabbing his shoulder, and necessity has forced him onto the field, but we know he really loves playing, and we know his folks enjoy seeing him play. So question is, will Pat want to be a full-time coach? Will he want to continue to be a player coach? Will he want to come back and play full-time? A nice bid there by McClellan against Mast. Shayna Repperman catches the disc against Jessica Mast. Jonathan Mast has it now. McClellan joins him. He sends it a big bender that's going to come back in bounds for Eddie Peters, but not before Austin Johnson can knock it out of the way. So he tried to float a bending forehand into the back corner of the end zone for Eddie Peters, but Eddie ran out a sideline there, and Johnson came in, cut off the angle. Now Duhlman has it. He swings it over to Mast. Jess Mast moves Max Shepard around with some fakes. Jess has terrific fakes, both forehand and backhand, and moving the defenders around as she wants, then sends it back to Duhlman, who throws a high release over the shoulder of Jordan Robarge to Mast. And Mast also has a really, really quick first step off of the throw. So while she's not a tall player, she doesn't have long legs, she has a quick first step and is usually able to get open on a strike cut. Now Rogers passes back to Duhlman, and he finds Mast in front of a laying out Justin Kincaid. Peach can't quite get his hand on it. And this one attempted to throw it, Mast throw it back to McClellan, but instead it's intercepted and thrown to Max Shepard. So an interception by Jordan Robarge, I believe, finds Max Shepard with a pass, an inside-out forehand that floats in the end zone. And all that hard work by Mast and Duhlman goes for naught because ultimately trying to get the disc across the field, unable to move the defenders on the handlers around the way she wanted to, Jess Mast serves up an interception, and the score is 26-8 in favor of your Thunderbirds.
First of the year, number 1, Max Shepard. Scores 26-8, 8:31 left in the game, 8:31 left in the season.
As Maddie Francis just reminded the crowd, 8:31 left in the game and the season for the Thunderbirds. And that certainly wasn't the way that the Thunderbirds hoped it would go at the beginning of the season. But as I said, learning and growing, and going to close out with 3 straight wins, one against the playoff team, Minnesota Wind Chill, and they will sweep the season series against the Mechanix, as everyone did. Alex Hunt attempts to throw a little barbecue backhand swing to Josh Leiter, and Kenny Fridella looked like he had a block, and everybody froze for a second, and then Mike Gorham said, no such luck. That was a block, and actually it's Trevor Bauer. I don't want to take the call away from him. So Trevor Bauer, our 4th official. This one laced up into the middle to Kevin Nickel, sends it back to Leiter. And this one thrown downfield to Alex Hunt. Leiter throws a pretty and very sharp bending backhand. Hunt corrals it on the goal line, and then he finds Sabo, PJ Sabo, for the 9th goal for Detroit. So just under 8 minutes, score is 26-9, and the Mechanix looking to break into double digits. Not too much doubt that they will, but if you're into proposition gambling, since sports gambling seems to be legal everywhere now, if you want to have a prop bet, does Detroit get double digits? 7:56 remaining. I'd bet on it. They're starting to find their rhythm with each other. Really good work by Jessica Mast, by Josh Leiter. Alex Hunt, who we didn't see as much of in the first 3 quarters, has been a pretty steady presence on the field here in the 4th quarter, and is definitely doing some damage. Ryan Mario with the disc, about to pull it to your Thunderbirds. And Joe Rogers with him. Jess Mast stays on the field, as does Tom Duhlman. Schubert jogging down with them. McClellan with a spectacular Lincoln-esque beard. Kenny Fridella picks up the disc on the sideline, and Jess Mast almost sneaks past her brother for a block, and Jonathan floats it up, an inside out that finds Jimmy Toll. Jimmy Toll has Chris Graber cutting in, and he runs through a little bit of a picket fence, but no pick is called. Doesn't look like there needed to be one. Duhlman on the mark, Graber running out of time, and he tries to send an inside-out swing to Jimmy Toll. It's batted down by Schulman, but we're going to get a call instead, and looks like it might have been a contact foul on the thrower, but that's froze action. The disc doesn't lie, of course, and instead Graber just throws one into the middle of the field, and Schulman intercepts it. He sends it back to McClellan, who throws a hammer up that Max Shepard looked like he was about to own, jumped up and missed it, and looks like McClellan looking for a call there, doesn't get it. Instead, Shepard throws it up to Mast. Mast finds Fridella on the righty backhand sideline. Duhlman comes in to join him. This one sent out into the middle of the field, a nice, big, lots of time swing. And now Ethan Beardsley has it on the home sideline. He sent up to Mast. A lot of forwards passes for him. Mast slings it inside out to Graber, who's got it on the doorstep. Looked to go with that lefty backhand for a second, doesn't, and instead floats it out to, we think, probably Ryan Shepard. Ryan looked like it was supposed to go to Max Shepard, but instead it looks like Ethan Beardsley intercepted the pass that was intended for Shepard. It's not really an interception, it's just a goal. So Thunderbirds working very smoothly after the turnover. It's 27-9.
Assisting for your Thunderbirds, it started the season number 92, Chris Graber. And scoring for your Thunderbirds.
It's 26-9. Sorry, it's 27-9. Thunderbirds, 7:07 remaining in the game and the season.
Beardsley. Beardsley.
Nice to see Ethan Beardsley pull one down. Another former Thunderbird is listening, Aaron Buss. Aaron, happy to see you here on our stream, and if you just tuned in, your alumna here, your alma mater, Thunderbirds up comfortably against the Detroit Mechanix, 27-9, as Eddie Peters launches a high pull. A lot of time to get down on this one. Josh Leiter's going to pick it up about 12 yards outside the goal line, sends it over to Danny Hunt. He's joined by Dylan Tranquillo pretty quickly. Leiter flanking him. Kevin Nickel on an in-cut. Disc still well within Mechanix territory. They've got a sloppy sort of horizontal stack. Leiter catches a pass from Danny Hunt, a little high release. Working hard against Tranquillo. Tranquillo makes a bid. Hunt steps in front of him. Sends it back to Leiter. Those two are kind of playing catch. Tranquillo looks very much like he would like a block. Here's a hammer across the field. It's helixing. Eddie Peters makes a heroic bid for it, but Nickel manages to catch it. Finds Howard, and Howard sends it to Sabo. So we've got a call somewhere on the field, looking like that's going to come back. And maybe they called a foul on Peters. Nope, it was an injury. Peters on that bid, he bid from behind his receiver, managed to avoid heavy contact on that hammer, and he looks a little bit shaky. So we're hoping that that wasn't an injury to his head, because he has that look about him of somebody who is trying to gather himself a little bit. So, of course, in Ultimate, there's no continuation after an injury. The only thing that would be continued is if the pass was in the air. But even then, play goes back to the point at which the injury took place. And so, at about midfield, Danny Hunt sends it across field to Alex Hunt. Now it's on the righty forehand sideline, and Peach and Sabo underneath this one. It goes over both of them. Peach established position. Sabo fell down. Pat McMullen ran behind it, intercepts the pass, trots it up to the goal line, throws an inside out to Peach, who sets off and running, going straight up that backhand sideline. Steve May back to Peach, and he's got Trimble going deep, but he's picked up by a defender. Pat Mack makes a nifty little cut off to his side and then slings it out into the middle of the Tranquillo. Now we're on the home sideline with Trucks Trimble 10 yards outside the goal line. He's got Shayna Repperman across field, might be thinking about throwing a hammer up to her, running out of time, slings a swing across the field to Steve May. And then open in the middle of the field was Repperman, but the pass was floated by May, and it was deflected. Now Nolan Howard catches a sloppy hammer and sends it right back to Josh Leiter. They're 5 yards outside their goal line. And so Detroit with the disc. We've got 5:23 remaining. It's 27-9. Detroit in possession. And Leiter has the disc. Thought he might try to crank it, but Pat Mack stepped in front of him. Instead, he sends out a blading forehand, which Sabo just doesn't see quickly enough. Saba was cutting away towards that forehand side, and Leiter threw him a bit of wasn't a blade, but it was a sharp forehand, about 25, 30-yard pass that Saba might have been able to catch had he seen it. Now, Robar centers the disc to McMullen. Thunderbirds up around about 10 yards short of midfield, and the disc in the hands of May, who airs it out to Trimble. Trimble looks like he's got distance on Howard. All he has to do is keep it in the back of the end zone, which he does. So, Steve May throwing an unusual assist, a perfect floating forehand, just kind of hangs out in front of Trucks Trimble. Trucks Trimble running all over the field, always in awesome shape, and showing tonight he's just not slowed up at all. And he gives the Thunderbirds a 28-9 lead. And that proposition bet about the Mechanix getting into double digits is starting to look a little bit better if you took no as the bet.
Of the year, number 15, Scott Trucks Trimble.
So, Thunderbirds looking to open up that lead to a full 20, 28-9.
Man, he was really dropping down the field.
You had him good.
Just wanted to remind everybody that the AUDL season does not end just because the Thunderbird season ends. And championship weekend will be coming up, and we'll fill you in with more details on that before we close out today's broadcast. Meanwhile, Detroit attempting to get into double digits, and that's really the drama that we have left here. Or will Shayna Repperman or Jessica Mass catch another goal? This is a huck that goes up all the way downfield to Joe Rogers. He's got it on the 10, sends it back to Schulman. He rifles it to Rogers. Austin Johnson working in the end zone. Schulman and Howard looking to play catch. Leiter on the field, guarded by Akon, who kind of shadows him. McClellan leads Schulman, who lays out of bounds in the end zone, but leads him by too much. And the Thunderbirds pick up the disc with just under 4 minutes to play. And that nice huck that found Howard deep in Thunderbirds territory looked like their best bet to not just score. Now Hammonds makes a up-the-line cut for Shepard, who catches it himself going up the line. He's in a power position, but then is joined for Schulman, so nothing quite there. Had Mast and Hammonds for a swing, chose the deeper swing to Hammonds, who hits Mast. Mast hits Shepard at midfield. Shepard again, with vision, had Ferdella, but instead cranks it inside out to Anthony Kahn. Anthony Kahn with the disc, about 25 yards outside the goal line. Austin Johnson joins him. Clock is ticking all the same on the stall and sends it back to Mast, who finds Ferdella. Ferdella throws that lefty forehand to Graber, who jumps up and makes a nifty catch right in front of the pylon, and we have a 20-goal lead. It is 30-13. It's 3-13, sorry. And I'm a little ahead of myself, 29-9 on the score.
And that's another Thunderbirds goal! Assisting on the goal, his fourth in the game, touch of the year, number 14, Kenny Ferdella. And scoring for your Thunderbirds, his fourth in the game, 11th of the year.
Multitasking a little bit because we wanted to look up some information for you and let you know about Championship Weekend. And Championship Weekend returns to Madtown, Madison, Wisconsin, home of the Madison Radicals. You'll remember the last time that it was there, it was in 2016, and Madison was on track to play the final in front of their home fans, but they lost in a semifinal, I believe, to Seattle. And since then, their goal has been to get back to that championship weekend, which they have done every year, and to play for the AUDL title, their first one, in front of their home fans. And so there's tremendous motivation for them to try to get there. And that championship weekend, for those of you who are maybe thinking about going or at least tuning in, is going to take place on August 11th and 12th in Madison, Wisconsin. So think about getting there. Certainly watch ESPN3 and watch UltiWorld and tune into, go to the AUDL's website. Just Google the AUDL or AUDL, and you'll find the broadcast schedule there. You won't want to miss any of it because that is the creme de la creme. Certainly, the Roughnecks have a chance of being there, and the Night Watch. I'm sorry, not the Night Watch. The Aviators, and from LA, Madison certainly. Maybe Indy can break through into that Final Four. Speaking of looking to break through into double digits, about midfield, Leiter with the disc for Detroit. Now Jessica Mast catches a dump. She fakes it to Alex Hunt and then throws it, sticks on her finger, that backwards dump, and Leiter lays out Josh Leiter to catch it and bails her out and then throws it back to her. So Thunderbirds kind of they're playing person to person, but they're playing a loose person to person. And Leiter throws a helixing hammer up there, Tranquillo underneath it, and he gets in front of Seba, and there's no call there. And so that helixing hammer in the end zone, we are under 2 minutes with McMullen with the disc marked by Seba. Throws it back to Robarge. Thunderbirds looking to break into the 30s and prevent the Mechanix from breaking into double digits at all. And Anthony Kahn almost handcuffed by a throw, but he catches it, sends it to the middle of the field to Robarge. They're still in their zone, but Robarge changes that, throws a big one up for Pat Mack. Giving chase quickly was Duhlman and Jessica Mass, but Pat Mack hangs on to it. He gets behind them, and looking dejected with his arms akimbo and his head down, Tom Duhlman walks towards the sideline. He's given just about all he has to give, and with just a minute 16 remaining in the Thunderbird season, the Thunderbirds are up 30-9, and their goal here, with a defensive team that will consist of Shayna Repperman, Max Shepard, Pat Hammonds, the coach, Ethan Beardsley, the Birdman, the lefty, in the absence of Sam Van Dusen, Kenny Fridella, and looks like Steve May and Jimmy Toll will try to close them out, break them one more time, and keep them into single digits. I want to thank everybody who stuck with the Thunderbirds all through this season, a season that started with hope and uncertainty, that started with a 1-point win against these Mechanix. Kind of interesting to remember that the Mechanix and the Thunderbirds have played twice before this. Each time the Thunderbirds won, but only by 1 goal in each game. So they have basically multiplied their margin of victory in the previous 2 games by a factor of 10. Of course, we're not seeing the full squad for Detroit, but we're not seeing the full squad for the Thunderbirds either. But the season, which started with uncertainty and then a lot of disappointment, ends with some hope and some momentum. Trying to find some momentum here is McClellan. Paul McClellan sends a huck, but it's to nobody, and the only person who makes contact with it is Steve May. And now trotting to it to pick it up with 43 seconds left. Pat Hammonds, the coach. I want to thank Andrew Gardner for another terrific season supporting what we hope is the best broadcast in the AUDL. Whether it's, and here's Max Shepard speaking about one of the best in the AUDL, throws a beautiful arcing forehand to Jimmy Toll, who catches it right on the goal line. He's joined quickly by 2 teammates, and he throws it backhand out to Shayna Repperman, who catches number 3 of the game, to put the Thunderbirds up 31-9 with just 20 seconds remaining, and that's a crowd pleaser for sure. Beautiful throw from Max Shepard, who finds Jimmy Toll, and then he sends it up to Shayna Repperman, very popular Thunderbird with the crowd, with her teammates, hard worker, terrific player, and one of the great personalities here in Pittsburgh. Anson vacated the Chief Repperman position. He's going to come back and maybe try to reclaim it, or just as he said, I've seen my sister in the rearview mirror for quite some time. She's been gaining on me as a player, and she's performed beautifully tonight. So Andrew Gardner, thanks for all you do for this team. Melanie Callahan, ably assisting him. Anthony Mobile, the trainer. Dave Leonetti, the assistant coach. Pat Hammonds, player coach. Our terrific officiating crew, which includes head referee Brian Heim and Mike Gorham, and joining them tonight, Andrew Miller, and several others who Trevor Bauer. We've had other folks put on the striped jersey for us this year. So this pull goes out of bounds. The clock doesn't start until the first pass is completed. And as I said, it's all over but the shouting, folks. Been a congenial home for the Thunderbirds up here on the bluff, and it looks like fans are starting to find us up here. Don't know where we'll be next year. We've had 3 or 4 different homes. We might be back at Couple Stadium on the south side. Really enjoy the south side. Riverhound Stadium is always the dream. Been out at Founders Field and played the mixed game out there. Nickel with the disc now. Finds Alex Hunt. Time ticking down. Getting down towards 10 seconds. That's where we are right now. Disc in the hands of Leiter. He's looking. Finds Alex Hunt over there. Lofts one into the end zone. And Howard comes down with it. And so if you made the proposition bet that the Mechanix would not get into double digits, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're going to have to pay out with 1 second remaining. The score is 31-10. And Maddie Francis acknowledging our interesting wagering up here. Great job by Maddie, by Bill Holman, by our DJ. And pumps up the crowd with a terrific selection. Always right on the money. Owners Tracy and Amy Neuendorf. Despite the fact that this season didn't end up with the win total that the Thunderbirds wanted and isn't going to end up in Madison, this is still a terrific organization with a lot to be excited about, and we're glad to have anybody listening as a fan, and we have high hopes going into next year. So this falls into Max Shepard's hands. He jacks one deep. It will cover the length of the field. It will sail into the end zone. Can the Thunderbirds finish with a goal? They do, and fittingly, Jimmy Toll catches a disc from Max Shepard. We've got a appeal from sitting on the ground there, one of the Mechanix defenders is saying, "Where's the call?" Brian Heim says sorry to Danny Hunt. Just got skied. It was a hospital pass. Nobody's going to the hospital. Everybody walking around. And the game ends with goose eggs on the clock. 32 for the Thunderbirds, 10 for Detroit. So, as I said, a season that ends differently from the previous three, but with still a lot of joy and excitement just at the spectacle of professional ultimate here in Pittsburgh. Players who enjoy playing and play the game with the energy and enthusiasm and spirit and skill that honors that game, and who connect closely with their fans, come out and play with their fans in rec league and pick up. This is truly a Pittsburgh team, and it will remain a Pittsburgh team. So we hope that you'll stick with the Thunderbirds through Facebook and our website, and continue to follow the progress of the team as it goes through tryouts and builds a roster all over again. The Mechanix waving to the crowd, and soon the Thunderbirds will come over and shake hands. And as with so many AUDL games, this thing you don't get to do very often at a Pirates game or a Steelers game. Come out on the field, throw with the players, throw with each other. Pro Ultimate, 4 seasons in the bag and more ahead, alive and well in the city of Pittsburgh. We thank you so much for being part of it, and we hope that you will be again next season. So the Thunderbirds finish with 4 wins, 3 of them against these Mechanix, and a 32-10 victory. On behalf of the entire organization, I'm Matt Weiss, the voice of the Thunderbirds on Radio 41.2 The Berg, and we wish you a very excellent rest of the summer, a wonderful club season, and wherever you are, good day, good disc, and thanks for joining us.